was first at Bournemouth Park Road School, yes, mainly, yes, they were lovely. Everyone was kind. The teachers were very, very nice. Headmaster was nice. I knew most of the children because we'd all come from that area, so we were quite friendly then. The most important thing for me was we learnt to dance. We learnt to dance the minuet, which was quite fantastic. The boys hated it, obviously, because they had to dance with the girls, which they didn't like. The last teacher when I was there, when we came back from evacuation, was a Mr. Jones, who was a really nice man, very old as far as I was concerned, at sort of 6 and 7 years old. He just thought he was an old, he obviously was. And the headmaster, I remember Mr. Stockdale. Don't really remember any of the others. When we were evacuated, at my age, we really didn't sink in what we were doing, that we were leaving home for good. And the morning it happened that we were going, we all went to school with our gas masks on. I don't even remember what happened to the luggage. I didn't carry any luggage. Whether that had been taken to the station beforehand, I really don't know. And we had to get in a crocodile, which was 2 by 2, and we walked from Bournemouth Park Road to the station in Southend, which was a long walk. And then I really don't remember very much. I remember eating my sandwiches in the train, but nobody had thought to give us anything to drink, any water. It was a long journey, seemed a very long journey. We came to a very big junction where there were lots of railway lines, and we couldn't believe that. We'd never seen that many railway lines in our life before. That was quite an excitement for us. And then we went on to, we didn't know where we were going actually, and we landed up at this tiny station, and we all had to get down from the train and again walking crocodile, and we were taken to the local school in a village near Mansfield called Rainworth, which they called Rennes, because their accent was entirely different to our accent. Then we walked to the school, and we were all sat on the edge of the stage. The school was called Python Hill School, and the people who were going to have us as evacuees just came along and just picked us. If they fancied like the look of us, they picked us, and my sister and I were kept together, and we went to this very nice house in Rennes or Rainworth, which was in South Avenue. Couldn't tell you the number. We slept in a bedroom at the front of the house, and every morning, 5:45, 5ish, you would hear the miners starting to walk to work, and we could hear their hobnail boots as they were outside in the street, and you'd hear the lone one at first, and then perhaps a couple would come by, and in the end you would hear all these hobnail boots clattering down the street on their way down to the Rufford Colliery where they worked. That's a very, very real memory I have of that. And they would all be wearing their helmets, which had lights at the front, and their boots. Just a very, very unusual memory. The people were quite nice, very strict with us. We couldn't giggle, we couldn't talk during meals. Nan used to slap us quite a bit on the backs of our legs, which was quite painful if we giggled. Food was pretty good. There was no shortage of food. There was no shortage of fuel because he was a coal miner and they all had allowances for the coal. We never ever felt the same as at home, where you got the tiniest bit of butter and bread was rationed, everything was rationed in Southend. But no, they were quite all right. There were lots of farms nearby, and they would get meat and they'd get their vegetables and things. So no, there was no real rationing at least as far as we were concerned. This is the ration book that we had. It's from 1953 onwards, it says, and I was married at this time. We'll come to the different pages. Oh, this is the rationing year 1953 to 54, and you had the names of your suppliers. You had the meat, eggs, fat, cheese, bacon, sugar, milk. And when you went to buy your food, every week they would cross off. You'd had your allowance. They were very small allowances, I must admit. I didn't eat meat, so my husband was quite lucky because he used to have a double portion of meat, which could have been perhaps 4 or 5 ounces a week, if you can imagine that. And as you just went, you can see I had the meat there, didn't have any eggs there. That was the fats, that was margarine usually, and lard. Occasionally there'd be butter, cheese, bacon. Didn't look as if we had bacon. Sugar. Sugar had obviously come off rationing by then because they're not crossed anymore. That was the tea page here. That obviously wasn't on ration. These were our sweet coupons. We used to have to buy the sweets and get those marked off. Can't remember what that's for. These were our clothing coupons, because clothes were still very short in 1954. There. I think these were the later sweet ones, which obviously sweets were off ration. Although they were off ration, they really weren't very plentiful at all. And that's it. What else sticks in my mind was there was a Christmas party, and my sister got up on the stage and sang a song called Gee Ho Dobbin, which embarrassed me terribly. And then I, to my shame, got up and said a poem, and halfway through it I just burst into tears and ran off, and nobody clapped me. That was my debut on stage, and I've never done it again. Yes, life there was very different. The main thing was you hadn't got your mum and dad there. You hadn't got that support behind you. It really was quite difficult. Missed my mum and dad and my brother really very, very much. And the friends that we'd made. We had to make new friends. Missed the comfort of someone being kind to you and giving you a hug. There was nothing really like that. I suppose the people, to be fair, did their very best, but they'd never had children, so they didn't really know what these 2 strange-looking little girls were about. We had 2 billets. The first people, it happened that my mum and dad came one weekend and they found me with bruises on the back of my leg where I'd been slapped for giggling or whatever. Because I was such a pathetic little thing. I never really was naughty, I don't think. And so they were able to get us moved to somewhere else, which wasn't a better place. But they were grateful that, Mum and Dad were grateful that we were away from all the problems that were going on in Southend and the bombing in London. So that was that, really. We came back after a year and a half. And I remember the first thing we did, we came home and we went through all the cupboards and all the drawers to find all our old toys. And it was so lovely to be home. And when my mum came in from her job, because they still had to keep their job, the place was just a tip where we'd had everything out. But yes, it was lovely to be home. Mum had to go to work. She was conscripted, more or less, to go to work at EK Cole, the Echo, And I know afterwards she said she was making radio parts. My dad, we didn't know, he was actually on Foulness Island, which was a Ministry of Defence place. And we never ever found out what he was doing, no. And then he was an air raid warden in the evenings. We would listen to the radio. That was quite an occasion to listen to the radio when we came home to hear what was going on during the war. And I can remember some of Mr. Churchill's speeches, which were absolutely awe-inspiring, that he gave you confidence that we were going to get through the war. And one night we were in the air raid shelter because Dad had built an air raid shelter in the garden, which he'd had to dig an enormous hole and sink this Anderson shelter in. And we spent quite a few evenings there. Every time the air raid warning went, we had to go to the shelter. But one evening he came and he said, come outside. It was a June evening and it wasn't all that dark. And overhead, well, we thought hundreds of aeroplanes going across towards the south. And we knew that there was something big going on. It was quite fantastic. And all the searchlights were trained on them. It was, we knew something happened. And I think that might have been when they were going to invade France, when they were doing the main invasion. Yes, I was at Southend High School for Girls when the war ended. And my friend and I, we didn't know that the war was over, and we walked to school, and when we got to school it was closed, and somebody said to us, the war's over, and we didn't know what to do. We couldn't really believe it, and we walked down to the beach, and we sat on a wall there, and there were lots of people all there, and everybody was shouting and cheering, and it was a fantastic time, it really was. And all the lights came on, and it was making me a bit emotional. At St Mary's Church bells rang, which they hadn't been allowed to do during the war. And that night, somebody near where we lived, there was a huge grassy area. They lit a huge bonfire, and we all went round the bonfire and we sang songs, and people were dancing and kissing and cuddling. Not me, because I was too young. But it was just the most exciting time ever. Really was. When I went to Southend High School, it was such a large school. Never been in anything as large before. Going up and down a set of stairs that we weren't allowed to, and hoping that we would never get caught and things like that. Meeting all sorts of new people with new ideas. It's great. It was great. Really felt quite grown up then. I remember the first party we had at Southend High School for Girls, and we all had to take food in, and my mum made some mince pies, and somebody had brought in some buttered buns, and somebody brought in Branston pickle sandwiches, which were disgusting, awful. That's really a big memory there. How do I feel about my time during the war? I think it made me a bit introverted, actually. The fact that your mum and dad weren't there, and these are just strangers looking after you, made me even more shy than I was. It took me a long time, really, to come round and be myself, I think. And I can remember that. I can remember feeling very, very shy and not wanting to leave my mum and dad. It had quite an effect. My sister, when she was moved from the first billet, she went to a family where she had to do a lot of housework. She was 10, coming to 11, and she always used to say she was a housemaid there. So she obviously was affected as well. I should imagine many children were affected by it.